Alright guys, so before I put in the clips of when we were doing the crank, I know that I kind of mentioned it within the videos that what we ended up doing was a means to an end. We didn't take into consideration how big the crank throws were, and the crank was just a little too big to throw on the lathe. So we ended up polishing it on jack stands. Now, I have to drive the purpose home here that this was not a way to grind a crank or polish a crank to size. This is strictly for a surface finish, which it turned out great. I got it here laying in the engine. You saw it in the video, or you're going to see it in the video. And so it's a quick and easy way to do it at home if you have a crank that warrants it. Now, what we used was emery cloth, crocus cloth, whatever the fuck you want to call it, 400 grit, a little WD-40, and you just kind of work your way around the journals and polish, and clean it up, get all the scratches out best you can. Rule of thumb, if it catches your nail and you can't, then it's too deep, it needs to get ground down. Depending on the severity of the scratch, it might actually need to actually go down like 10 under, 20 under, whatever. It might not polish out. But these were actually in really good shape. Everything polished out with the 400, the emery cloth, perfect. So they got a really nice surface finish on it. And so we'll get to it. We'll show you guys what we did. All right, plan aborted on using the nice lathe. We didn't take into consideration how big the counterweights were. And we're completely stuck doing this like you would on the wagon trail. But this works. I already did 2. Ryan's working on those, and you can see the befores. Actually, this one's got had a little scratch. You can almost just barely make it out right here. It came out. So this crank is actually in good shape. It's got a little bit of pitting on this one there, but nothing deep at all. Nothing that catches your finger. And that's the important thing on crankshafts. If you're going to kind of do this backyard build stuff, you got to make sure that it doesn't catch your finger. Otherwise, it will eat up the bearing in that surface. But yeah, you want to go around, and you want to make sure that you get all of the axes, axi. You want to get the full, circumference of the surface. Ryan got me on terminology. I'm horrible with it, but you want to make sure you get all of it. And we're using 400 crocus cloth, which or flexible sanding cloth, whatever you want to call it, crocus cloth, emery cloth. It's not going to take a whole lot off of the surface, but it's much like the honing procedure that I showed you guys earlier. It's just enough to give us a new surface, and we're not going to create any flat spots on this really if we overdo it or don't do it exactly. But you can tell the difference between that finish and that finish. So we got something nice for our new bearings at least, and we're not going to create any micro scratches within the Babbitt surface. So we will follow this up to show you guys that, and we're going to measure out. We measured out one main, and then once we go and start measuring everything out, we'll get back at you. We're almost done. We're on the center main, the number 3 main, and you can see our surfaces actually look pretty damn good. Let me turn on my flash. You can see this was probably one of the worst ones. You can almost make out the scratches. They don't catch my nail, and the surface is really nice and smooth. So I mentioned that earlier already, but I'm going to mention it again, damn it. Oh. So far we measured 2 main journals, and they both mic'd out the same. I'm letting Ryan do this because he spent quite some time as a machinist. He knows how to do this perfect.
You want tenths on this one?
It's up to you, man.
It's 69 and 8/10.
All right.
So that one's a little tighter.
The other ones were right on the nose at 269?
Just about, yeah.
All right, cool.
I'll remeasure.
Which the number 3 is the main thrust surface. That's the center of the crank. That one might, because these, according to some builders, are like big spaghetti noodles. So Alright, not bad. That one's equally as tight as the other one. So, and that's on the number 2 main.
Yeah.
Now we got the last one. Don't worry, guys. We're lightly moving it on the jack stands.
And it's on the snout, and it's on there.
Not bad.
Let me go back. I'll measure these two just to see exactly what the tenths were.
Yeah. We weren't counting tenths before, guys. That was an afterthought, but we'll check these again. What do we got on the number 5? I'll write it down.
It's going to be 3/10.
3? Alright.
Yeah.
So it seems like the ends are going to be tighter, bigger towards the center, which kind of makes sense. By the way, gasser, tunnel ram, badassness. Back to this.
Big block, magneto.
Big block, magneto, kick-assness.
7/10 on this one.
Yeah, so it seems like,
Fucking this one is just the smallest one, really.
you know, it seems like on the mains, and these are tenths. They're tighter on the ends, looser in the center. It seems like a gradual. So, and then it's pretty much the same thing on the rods. We'll measure out the rod mains, and those are going to be my specs to follow when I measure for my bearing clearances. So that's why we do this. All right, guys. So we got done measuring our main journals, rod journals. As you can see, we are within a couple of tenths all the way across the board. It was 2.4798. That's like a half a tenth, really. So you could see all the way across the board we were pretty good, and so it's pretty tight still, not horrible. And I wanted to bring up the point that how your machinist may measure and how you may measure might differ, because between Ryan and I, we were, how far off were we? Like a tenth?
Yeah.
Between each of us.
Oh, yeah.
So I checked mine a little tighter, but with his finesse, he was at a tenth, a little looser, which is probably where it should be. I think I cranked down the thimble just a little too much. But this is the backyard ghetto crank polish, but the measurement is definitely still scientific as all fuck, because this dude's a machinist at heart, and knocked it out, man. So this is the last big piece, and then from here we do a little bit more cleaning and more measuring and assembly.